Happy New Year's, everyone. Welcome 2019. Following up on what was a lot of surprisingly very positive feedback on my more recent video talking about diverting water, and that a lot of folks seem to indicate that having these sorts of thorough discussions have been helpful to them. So that's what this video will be about. I'm going to be reviewing a water system here on the far west side of the main 6-acre edible acre site. I'm going to link here to a past video where I go into greater detail about this and also just give you some historical context. But what we're looking at is the far west end of the property, one of the highest points in the landscape, in a relatively flat landscape. You can see this brush debris wall, which I talk about a lot in other videos. Just beyond here, this open field and then orchard. I'll give them their privacy. I won't spend a lot of time on it. But there's about 20 acres there, which is up slope of us and up water and wind shed, conventional orchard. The irony of calling it conventional to use chemicals as opposed to, anyway, we'll leave that alone. They use spray. That's their choice. I asked them, is it possible on their side to use the machines that they work with to divert the water to not enter our property? Seeing as how we've got this northern and then eastern sloping, gentle overall picture to the landform, it seems like it would have been easy for them to just trench it out and send it back their way. It never happened. Surprise. And so, as their water enters the very beginning of our watershed, you can see it's just a gentle trickle right now. We're going to be coming into some freezing time here again very shortly, and so I thought I'd renovate this. I've hand dug the best that I can the solution to their chemi water. So rather than having that come directly through, you can see where it wants to come through, and in fact it bleeds up from the soil in here and into some trenches. And this is not a rut from cars driving, by the way. These are hand dug. We never drive back here. What I need to do is berm this area up a little bit more, but by and large the water has been dug out to aim it northbound. Part of the reason for that is if I just were to leave this landform exactly as it is, the flooding in their field on the east end of their property line would bleed out and simply work its way into this general lull in the landscape. I do not want that water. There's no way around it. The water is going to move through the soil, but I don't want direct surface flow of that type of water entering into all these hand-dug ponds and systems. And you can see here, there's a lot happening that I like. I'd like the idea of being able to dip into these ponds and not think about what's in there, or to pick Belaruscaja and Menage Meru black currants next to these ponds and not wonder what sort of juices are also in there. So diverting all of that surface flow water and aiming it back into their landscape is worthwhile. It's worth all of the physical effort, and it's worth doing it if they're not going to do it. So I want to review that. So here's their water coming in, trickle, trickle. And as I mentioned in the past video, this is the property line, and so from this cut to the line, which is about 6 feet deep or so, I've planted about 2,000 trees, mainly from cuttings, but also things like blue false indigo bush or Amorpha fructicosa, black locust, honey locust, willows, mainly nitrogen fixing and biomass producing plants, not plants for our food consumption. But you can see as I walk northbound, this trench is cut in a way to take that entering water and send it that northbound way. So let's see if it's actually doing that. So to my eye, what I'm looking for is to see, in general, currents of water moving northbound, moving through this trench. Here's a neat example. These are both blue false indigo bush or river locust or Amorpha fructicosa. They're now 8-9 feet tall with an alder right behind them. This thicket is really filling out with nitrogen fixers and biomass producers, and that's pretty exciting. They're all going to help with the filtering process, add debris into the water, have nutrient cycling, and the like, and they can take up whatever junk they want, and we'll use it as firewood someday down the road. That's the best we can do. Maybe someday they'll quit spraying. That would be the very best that they could do. Can you tell it boggles my mind and bothers my mind? Anyway, keeps going northbound. Here you can see the water's actually running at a good clip. Very exciting to me. So it's gaining some momentum. Slow it, spread it, sink it. Yes, always a valuable mantra. But when there are toxic loads to be sent to a destination, getting them there with a little bit of movement is not the worst idea. And I think there's some value to the idea of it moving with enough velocity to incorporate some oxygen or to kind of have the water roll on itself, to be able to activate it, get it really alive, rather than sitting stagnant in this trench. But here it goes further. You can see the landscape to the right of it, or downslope to the east of it, has dried out a little bit because this trench is helping to drain out this area just a little bit. Finally, the water sheds back more or less. So again, here's our property line. I cut it. I did not want to trespass, so I didn't go over their property line, but I cut it pretty deeply to send it back into our common hedge. It sends back into their field in this area. A little bit of it wicks through the soil and bleeds back out into the surface over here. Let me lean my shovel up. But this last area where some of their water is going to accumulate is now going to become where we propagate 10 to 15 different varieties of cultivar willows. And so I figure the cuttings of the willows that we could either sell or use to plant in other areas, they can biofilter and break down whatever last bits of material may be in their water before it goes back into their property, if it does, from this side. But you can see these are all variegated Japanese willows. We'll be putting in pussy willows, we'll be putting in hybrid poplars on real high density to have it all soak up that water and transform it into organic matter and woody debris. And you can see there's lots and lots of compost that I've added, that I've seeded to cover crops. The best thing I can think of dealing with polluted water was ideally send it back to the source, but what I can't send back, to have it interact with as much organic matter, as much life, perennial, hardy, deep-rooted life as possible before it goes slowly deeper into the common aquifer. So that's kind of an update after, 3 years or so of modifying and slowly adjusting. But neighbors' water coming in, and instead of going into and bleeding into the whole general watershed of the edible acres scene, it's coming northbound and for the most part back into their property. And as I like to allude to with all of these videos, none of this is done with laser levels or A-frames or graphs or drones or anything. It's done with a shovel when the water table is high enough that it's expressing intention. So I can slice a little with the shovel, see where it goes, coax it this way or that way, and that's how all of this was informed. It's the intersection of the reality of how water wants to move, how I would like it to move, and then also our access and pathways, and also kind of these invisible lines of property ownership. It's a complex set of metrics to work through, but it's very doable if it's iterative, if you just chip away at it and come back over and over again. So that is this passive system, taking junk water and hopefully sending it back to the owner. If not, then filtered through willows. Thanks for watching.